Working remotely isn't going anywhere, especially in a post-COVID world. Actually, it's crazy to think that someone might watch this video later and think, this video was made during the COVID era. That's just nuts to me. Well, recently I was given the opportunity to work remotely and I loved it. However, I wanted to turn this opportunity into an experience. So I signed up for WeWork. And truthfully, I had to sign up for WeWork because finding space to work in my 2-bedroom apartment with a family of 5 is, well, difficult. Yeah, let's say difficult. So I Googled best WeWorks in NYC, and from that list, I picked a few locations that piqued my interest, and my experience was honestly surprising, and I found some tips along the way that are going to help you out. Let's get started in a neighborhood I love, a Chelsea at 511 25th Street. And if it wasn't for the terrace space at this Chelsea WeWork, I would call the space underwhelming. It's not disappointing by any means, it's great, but there's nothing that wowed me about the space. Additionally, the common space where everybody can come work, it was small. And you're probably like me, when you walk into a public space, like a theater, a coffee shop, a co-working space, or any other place where you know you're gonna be there for an extended period of time, you're trying to find an area that you can kind of just like make your own. And the smaller common space in Chelsea makes it difficult to find that corner you can claim, which makes the terrace less of an extra feature and more of a need. I will say this though, the terrace was so nice. Now, all of this sounds great, right? But I wasn't able just to walk into any WeWork and start working whenever I wanted to. Anyone walking into a WeWork has to pay. So let's talk a little bit about that payment structure. As of right now, I don't need WeWork every single day because I have my own office. I'm actually sitting in it right now. I have an on-demand WeWork membership. Now that means I can pay $39 to use a WeWork space for the entire day. I arrive, I find a desk, I get to work. And all of WeWork's amenities are also available to me. This is great when I just want a change of scenery from my normal routine. Now, when I was working remotely, I needed space every single day. That's when I paid for the all access membership. It's not 39 bucks a day. This costs closer to like 300 bucks a month, but it allows you to book a WeWork space at any time and in any location, wherever or whenever you want in the world. And sometimes I would arrive at a WeWork and find it not to be my scene. And for no additional cost, I was able to book a different WeWork just a few blocks away that same day. And unfortunately, this is what happened when I visited 199 Water Street. Okay, I maybe spent 30 minutes at this WeWork, but I still have an opinion on it. I took one lap around the place and thought, why would anyone put this on a list of best WeWorks? Well, the answer is the view. Amazing view, I'm not gonna argue with you there. However, you don't get that view unless you secure one of like 3 desks that gives you access to that view right by the window. Beyond that, it's not a good workspace. I spent 30 minutes here because I was ready to leave as soon as I arrived. I get it. The designer of this space was going for a vibe, and I appreciate that, but I still need space to work. I will happily give up cool design for functionality almost any day. Function over form, is that what it is? Function over form? Anyway, but this WeWork was not on the same wavelength as what I was going for. I'll simply say this. If you do not arrive early enough to find a seat at an actual desk, you will not have a comfortable working space for your stay at 199 Water Street, even though it finds itself on all of the best WeWork lists. I left this location pretty frustrated because it was not like all my other WeWork experiences, which were, for the most part, great. Now, it needs to be said, quick tip, that whether your WeWork space is great or not really your scene, it's still way better than fighting over one table that has an outlet at your local coffee shop, right? WeWork spaces are fancy. And they're well equipped. Every WeWork space has a large kitchen, a large common area where people from all walks of life are able to find space to work. And there are social areas where phone calls and conversations are welcome, and there are quiet spaces where you're expected to be, well, quiet. I mostly stayed out of those spaces, obviously. And instead of cold standard desks like lined up in a row, you're gonna find creative spaces like restaurant booths, comfy couches, and all sorts of places that are really inspiring to work in. And if you need to take a private Zoom meeting or a phone call, there are phone booths that allow you to have the space and privacy that you need. And then there are the amenities. And I think this is where WeWork really shines. They have printing, concessions, free coffee, and sometimes beer right on site in the kitchen. And then last but not least, WeWork staff is right there full time, and I have only had pleasant experiences working with multiple staff members. But even though 199 Water Street had those things, it just didn't meet my standards. But there was another WeWork just a few blocks away that ended up being one of my favorite WeWorks I visited. So let me tell you about it. 85 Bond Street was my saving grace. This is the WeWork I wanted when I decided to journey downtown that morning. In fact, it took what 199 Water Street was trying to do and said, hold my beer. However, they didn't have any beer on site.
Ew, no, David.
I guess nothing can be, truly perfect. Anyway, 85 Bond Street was one of the largest WeWorks I visited. I kept turning corners thinking that the hallway would end, but it just kept expanding and expanding. The common space felt less like a small kitchen with some comfy seats and a welcome desk and more like a fun restaurant, as weird as that sounds. And they perfectly paired the creativity of the space without sacrificing comfortability. It wasn't like that at 199 Water. That's why I truly loved 85 Bond. One more quick reminder, I would not have been able to switch locations without the All Access membership. It's a huge benefit. Having the All Access membership saved me when I was WeWorking daily. Having the ability to swap offices was not only convenient, but it also kept things interesting. I didn't get bored feeling like I was stuck in one place. And the price jump between on-demand and All Access is, let's be honest, it's pretty steep. But $300 a month starts to make sense when you realize that the same space is normally $39 a day and you're thinking, man, I need to spend 3 or 4 days a week there. But it needs to be said, from there, prices can get even steeper because there are even more options with WeWork. Options that you might need. You can book a permanent desk in one location, or a private office, or an office suite for a small team, or even an entire floor for a large team. The possibilities with WeWork are endless. My next adventure took me to Times Square. For those of you that don't know, if you live in NYC, you generally avoid Times Square like the plague, but I went there twice, and I have to say I loved it. The Times Square WeWork at 1460 Broadway, it felt like Narnia. Every time I got off the elevator on a different floor to check things out, I kept finding new little nooks and crannies where I could set up shop and get work done. This was also a very New York WeWork. 1460 definitely gives off like a vibe that a tourist would assume that this is what a New York office always looks like. And personally, I thought that the Times Square WeWork would have far more of like a corporate feel to it, but I was pleasantly surprised by the scuffed up floors and the old school restaurant booth with like wear and tear, not to mention, again, a terrace. Now, remember the Chelsea Terrace from earlier? The Chelsea Terrace felt like a functional need for the space, but the terrace at 1460 Broadway in Times Square was less of a need and more of a feature. Looking out, you get a break from your email and you get to drink in the beautiful chaos that is Times Square. So if you're a regular New Yorker like me and you're thinking, man, I want to work at a WeWork and I haven't really experienced the city in a while, go here. And if you're a tourist looking for a WeWork, go here as well. You're going to get to experience the city in a beautiful way. 507th Avenue was my second Times Square WeWork. And I want to mention how pleasantly surprised I was, again, by the Times Square WeWorks. Because remember, New Yorkers don't willingly go to Times Square. We let the tourists exist there, but it is not a place you will find us unless it's essential. But I would happily take the trip back to Times Square to work out of these locations. The second Times Square WeWork I went to was just as good as the first one. It did not have a terrace, but what it did have was something you won't find at any other WeWork on this list. Not only did they have free coffee, but they had a barista making specialty drinks on site for free. Well, I paid to be there, but you get it.
Hide the money, y'all. There's poor people around.
Also, the common space was 2 stories with a staircase that was like a really nice touch that allowed you to move between the 2 common spaces, and it just made the location feel huge, which I really, really liked. Okay, not far from Times Square was the Bryant Park location, and it pains me to say this, but along with the joy I experienced in these amazing WeWork spaces, again, there have to be a few bad apples, right? And Bryant Park was one of my biggest disappointments. For someone like me who didn't have a private office, the common spaces were not enough to make me want to stay there. However, the location was awesome. I was so close to like great food and good coffee shops, but the location seemed more like, again, a tourist attraction than an office space that I would want to stay in all day. In fact, I was one of the first people there that day, so I basically got the best seat in the house. But I'm so thankful because the seating was limited. Limited seating in a common workspace just doesn't work. If it were up to me, I would miss this location altogether if I could do it over again. I will say the interior was so cool. They had this spiral staircase that went in between all of the different floors, and the common spaces were small and there wasn't a ton of places to sit, but it really did look cool on the inside. But quick tip. If you book a WeWork and you enter the common space looking for a seat and you can't find one, just ask which other floors are WeWork floors in this building. And you're not going to find more than one large communal space, but every floor in most WeWork spaces I found have a few tables, restaurant-style booths, and workspaces that are free for anyone to use. They might be right beside a private office, but they're fair game for anyone. There's also a kitchen on almost every floor with coffee and refreshments. The common space has the largest kitchen, but every floor has a smaller kitchen that you're gonna find what you need in. Okay, folks, this was a huge shock to me, but the last WeWork on our list also became my favorite very quickly. And it's my local WeWork in Long Island City, where I live. And I think most New Yorkers stay away from it simply because it's in Queens. But here's my take. If you go across the street or take a short walk to get to your favorite WeWork, by all means, continue to do that. However, if you're already taking the train, get on the 7 and come to Queens. It's a short ride to one of the most spacious WeWorks that is laid out with expertise. The staff is friendly, there's always a seat, and the outdoor space at this WeWork is unmatched. Plus, even though I love the city, you're missing out on the busyness that most WeWork locations experience. So the Long Island City WeWork space is like something you should not sleep on. You should try it out. It's the best WeWork experience I had. Overall, there are some amazing benefits to working out of a WeWork. It's clean. You are not gonna have to clean up anything because they have a cleaning staff there making everything spotless all the time. It's safe. You can get up and walk away from your bag and not have to worry about things being taken. Obviously do this at your own risk because everyone else is also paying to be there. So it's not likely that people are gonna wanna steal things from you. And then it's also accessible. And we're not talking about one location. There are tons of locations all over New York, and almost all of them are great. You're not worrying about paying for utilities or fixing something that breaks in your space. All of that is taken care of. And there's also this WeWork community. You might see different people in the coffee shop daily or no people as you work at home, but WeWork has a consistent flow of regular attendees just trying to make their dream a reality like you. It's amazing how many interesting people you meet. But along with benefits, we have to talk about some of the drawbacks. And I think the only one for me is cost. It's not cheap. I mean, yeah, if you add up paying for your own office space, paying for your own utilities, paying for something that breaks in your office space, or paying for the gear that you have to put in your office space, yeah, I mean, it makes WeWork begin to look like a great deal, but it's still not cheap. But I gotta ask, out of all the WeWorks we discussed today, which one is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.